Welcome back to Simrite Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this beautiful A-line gown with mixed fabric. Okay, so right here you can see this A-line gown has a kissing pleat laid right inside the beautiful A-line gown. So I'll be teaching you the tips and tricks to making this A-line gown with Kampala combination and Ankara combination as well. So this is what I got right here. So you can see the upper piece of this dress. You can see how it's aligning with the sleeve, and you can see the inner kissing pleat. I'll be teaching you the tips and tricks to laying this beautiful A-line gown perfectly. You can see the pockets as well. So if this is what you want to learn in this class, I will encourage you to stay till the end of this tutorial to learn the tips and tricks to sewing this beautiful A-line gown and laying in the inner jacket, I will call it, and matching up the beautiful colors the way you see them right there, together with the beautiful sleeve as well. So we are going to jump into this tutorial right away to learn more. So right here I'm working with Kampala fabric and Ankara fabric. So my Ankara fabric is 6 yards and my Kampala fabric also is 6 yards, but I'm just going to cut out how many yards I'm using. So we will be working on the Ankara first. So for the Ankara fabric, I only use 3 yards. I only use 3 yards for my Ankara fabric. So here I'm going to lay my fabric first. We are going to cut out the front and back. So for the front piece, I use my hip circumference divided by 4. Then I added 8 more inches to it. So whatever your hip circumference is, divide it by 4 and add 8 inches to it, unfold. So now we are going to start up the cutting. So you are going to place this fabric as you can see right here. So is my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 8 inches. So now we are going to create the border line. So to begin to draft this, you are going to create 1 inch border line. So I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch as my border line. From that border line, we are going to take our vertical measurement. So I'm going to mark my chest line. So to get your chest line, you'll be using your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. Next, you are going to mark your bust points, okay? You mark your bust point and then you mark the full length of this gown. So I'm using the full length of Ankara. Ankara comes at 45, so I just use the whole 45 inches as my full length. I'm going to highlight my chest line, highlight my bust point line or my nipple line, then highlight the shoulder line as well and the full length. So on the shoulder line, I'm going to impute my shoulder divide by 2. So I added half an inch to my shoulder divide by 2 and it gave me 8 inches. I marked the same 8 inches on the chest line as you can see. So now I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder drop. Then I marked my neck width, 3.5 inches is my neck width, 3.5 inches. So I'll connect my shoulder slant, then connect my armhole line with a straight line. Then I went ahead to get the midpoint of my armhole and go in by half an inch. So this half an inch is for the front sleeve. So I'll go ahead and connect with a straight line. On the chest line, I marked my bust circumference divided by 4. So whatever your bust circumference is, divide it by 4. Mark and add 2 inches to it for seam allowance and for ease. So I'm connecting both the front and the back sleeve. Okay, so we have the front and the back drafting right here. So the neck width for the back is 1 inch. The neck depth is 1 inch. Then I'll connect it to the 3.5 inches neck width for the back. Then for the front, the neck depth is 3 inches. I connected the 3 inches to the 3.5 inches neck width. So this is my neckline for front and back. So the next thing we are going to do is to go over to the chest line and pick what we have on the chest line and mark it on the bust line. Then connect it with a straight line. Next, I'm going to mark my waistline. My waistline is 17 inches and I will mark my hip line. My hip line is 29 inches. So I'll just go ahead and highlight the lines. So this is my waistline and this is my hip line. After marking that, I'll come over to the waistline and mark my waist circumference divided by 4. I will mark and then I'll add 2.5 inches to it. 2.5 inches to it, and I'm going to connect it to the chest line. Then I'll come over to the hip line. I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4. Then I added 3 inches to it for ease and for seam allowance. On the hem, I marked my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 7 inches. So I'm going to connect from my waistline to the hip line. And then I'm going to use my straight rule to connect from the hip line to the A line on the hem. So you can see it's forming an A line right there. So after marking that, the next we will do at the center front, we are going to cut out from the bust line. Okay, so we'll cut it out from the bust line after we are done drafting. But meanwhile, on the center front, we are going to mark 1/2 inch for joining the Kampala fabric. So I'll go ahead and mark 1/2 inch all the way. That 1/2 inch is for stitching the other fabric with the Ankara fabric. So I'll just go ahead and mark it as you can see. So I'm going to replace that 1/2 inch. We'll replace the 1/2 inch on the side. So you just go over to the side and add extra 1/2 inch. So I'll go ahead and connect it. So I'm also extending the 1/2 inch to the bust point because that is where we are going to cut out this dress. So I will go ahead and connect the 1/2 inch, which is the replacement of that center front line, because we are going to stitch the 1/2 inch with the other fabric and we'll be shorting some fabric if we don't replace it. So this is the front dress and the front dress is ready right now. So we are going to set this front dress aside and then we'll go over to the back piece. So for the back piece right now, I'm highlighting the neckline before we go over to the back piece. But before the back piece, please don't forget to add your pocket. I came down by 2 inches from my waistline and my pocket space is 7 inches. So I'll now place my hand the way you see me place right there, and I'm going to connect my pocket. So if you want to have a longer pocket, you can fold more of your fabric. Okay, so you have enough space for enough fabric. So here is my pocket. I like to slant my hand right down so the pocket will be relaxed after I'm done stitching it. So you can see how my pocket is. The pocket spacing there is 7 inches and I came down from my waistline by 2 inches to connect it. So this is what you're expected to have right away. So we'll go over to the back right now. So for the back, I folded my fabric with my hip circumference divided by 4. I added 12 inches to it. So I added enough fabric to the back piece because of the zipper allowance. So I'll just go ahead and mark 1 inch zipper allowance, as you can see right here. So on the folded edge of the fabric, I marked 1 inch. So I'm going to mark the 1 inch all the way down. So this is my zipper allowance. So I'm going to pick up the front dress right now and I'm going to place the center front of this dress right on this zipper allowance line and secure with my pin. Now we want to draft the back right away. So we'll just go ahead and extend the waistline, extend the neckline for the back, extend the hip line, extend the hemline, and then we'll proceed to contouring the zipper line. So I'm contouring with 1-inch zipper, and I'm going to connect it all the way to nothing to the neckline. I'll also connect from the waistline all the way to the hip line. So here is my contour line, and I'm going to cut out that zipper contour line, okay, to avoid zipper bulge at the back. Then I'm going to extend my waistline on the side, my chest line, and my hip line to replace that 1 inch. So on the waistline, I'll mark 1 inch. You can see where I'm marking my 1 inch. Then whatever I got on the chest line, I highlighted the chest line and took the shortage on the chest line, and I'll replace it on the side, as you can see. So next, I'm going to connect the replacement on the chest line to the waistline. So I'll go ahead and place my pattern ruler to nothing to the hip line, because I did not take anything to the hip line. So when I got to the pocket, I didn't mark on the pocket. So you can see what I got right there. So from that point, I'm going to mark my back pocket. So I just added the replacement on the back pocket. So I'll just go ahead and increase my pocket for the back a little bit because of that 1 inch replacement. So I just assume my pocket for the back is bigger by 1 inch on that point. Now I'll come down to also blend the down piece, so that part is not pointy. So I came up by 1.5 inches on that point and blended it all the way to the hem. That is to avoid pointy parts at the edge of the fabric after stitching. Now we are going to start cutting this dress. So I'll go ahead and cut, and I'm cutting on the outer line, which is the back line. So I went ahead to cut out the back piece. After cutting the back piece, we are going to separate it and now cut out the front piece. So I'm cutting through the back pocket right now. So if you look at the back pocket, you can see it's 1 inch longer than the front pocket. So I'm going to cut from that point. I'll take the cutting from the pocket piece all the way to the chest line. So when I got to the chest line, I cut through the back armhole, okay? So I cut straight through the back armhole. So here you can see me cutting through the back armhole. I did not touch the front armhole. So I added 1/2 inch on the shoulder seam line. Please don't forget to add your 1/2 inch for stitching, and cut only the back neckline. So I'm now cutting out the back contour line. So the zipper bulge line, I'll cut it off the way you see me cut it right now, up to the hip line. Then I'm going to open up to the hem, as you can see right here. So this is what we got after we are done cutting. So the next thing is to cut out this, to separate the upper piece, because we are going to replace this upper piece with our Kampala fabric, or any fabric of your choice. It can be Ankara or anything, but we just want to separate it from the bust point. Now I'm taking off the front. I'm taking the back away, so we'll be able to cut out the front, okay, the front piece. So for the front piece, I'll just go ahead and cut through the next line. I want you to watch and see where I'm cutting from. So I'm just cutting the last line, the replacement line. So, and I'm now going to cut my pocket, the front pocket proper. Then I'm going to go in and cut through the last line. Now I'm going to open up the center back, because we are going to attach or sew the Kampala fabric or the other plain fabric to the Ankara fabric. So the down front piece is ready right now. So we are going to pick up the upper piece. I will set the down part aside because they are ready. Then we'll pick up the upper piece and cut out the front piece. So here, this is what we got. We separated. So I'll separate the back piece for the upper piece, and then I'm going to cut out the armhole and the neckline. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my 3 inches neckline, and I'm going to cut out the line of my front armhole line. So this is what we got right now. So we'll just go ahead and replace this fabric with any fabric of your choice. So right here I'm using this Kampala fabric. So I only use 2 yards of this fabric. I only use 2 yards of this fabric. So I will just go ahead and fold it on one side, making sure I have the center front on fold, and also making sure I place the back piece appropriately. So I just decided to place the front and the back piece, and I added 1 inch on the waistline. So the only part you are adding seam allowance is the down piece to join the up and down. 1 inch. Make sure you add 1 inch. But for the rest of the sides, don't add any seam allowance because we've already added seam allowances all over. So I proceeded to cut the back as well. So here is the back piece, and I'm cutting it out accordingly. I also added 1 inch on the down piece. So you can see me taking the measurement of the 1 inch. So I'll go ahead and cut it out as you can see. So now the upper piece is ready. So we'll go ahead and set it aside. Then I folded my fabric for the inner piece. So how did I get my measurements? I went over to the waistline and took my waist circumference divided by 4. So mine is 9.5. I multiplied by 4 and it gave me about 38 inches. So I folded my fabric. I divided 38 by 2. I got 19. So I folded my fabric on fold. I added 1 inch, 20 inches. So in other words, I placed on fold 20 inches. When I open it, I will have 40 inches as the width of this fabric. So I'm taking the measurement at 20 inches. So you just use your waist circumference, multiply by 4. Add 1 inch for seam allowance. So now the length is going to be the length of the down piece of this fabric. So I just place this fabric right on top of the fabric, as you can see. So I went ahead and cut straight. Okay, so this is what I got. So the width is 40 inches, on fold 20 inches, but the length is the length of the down part. So I'm just trying to fold it to see how it's going to look like when I place it inside the dress. So this part does not really matter. I'm just testing or trying something. So I want to also see if the length is equal to that the plain fabric. So after that, I'm going to set this one aside. Then I cut my lining exactly the same width and the same length. So I'm going to set it aside. I went ahead and cut my lining the same length with the back piece. I set it aside and I went ahead to cut my lining the same exactly what I have for the front piece, and I set it aside. So after that, we'll begin to join the front. So I am going to take off the upper piece of this fabric. It has served as our pattern right now. So I'm going to discard it and then work with the Kampala fabric and the lining. So I'm going to lay the fabric right side to right side. We'll go over to stitch the neckline. So I'm going to secure with my pins right now, and I'll go over to my machine. I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch all the way round. So I'll also bring the back piece take away the pattern, then lay my fabric right side to lining, and I'm going to also stitch my necklines accordingly. So I'm going to stitch at 1/2 inch. So make sure you secure with your pins and head over to the sewing machine to stitch and top stitch. So I'll go over and stitch and top stitch right now. So after stitching, don't forget to make notches. So you can see me making notches to ease that curvy part. Then I flip all my seams to the lining and top stitched. So this is what I got for the back and front. So next we are going to sew the shoulder seam line. So I'll just pick up and wrap it up with the lining. Of course, you know how to go about this part. So you just go ahead and wrap the 3 of them. Place them right side and wrap it. So after stitching, you have a perfect inseam finishing right there, as you can see. Now the upper piece is ready. We want to go over to the down piece, and this is the main purpose of this tutorial. So now I'm separating the lining from the main fabric. So I'm taking off all the lining from the main fabric. So after taking it off, I'm going to lay the Kampala fabric or the plain fabric and lay it. As you can see, I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch. So you lay the center front with the side of this plain fabric and stitch 1/2 inch. So you can see how I placed it. Okay, the pocket is inside. You are going to lay it right side to right side. Now I'm going to flip all my seams to the Kampala fabric right now. That is the pink fabric, and top stitch right on top of it so it relaxes very well. So this is what I got. So I top stitched on both sides, as you can see. Now I'm going to put the fabric together to get the midpoint. So you can see how I put it together. Next is to make a notch. So that is the midpoint where the kissing pleat is going to match. So at that midpoint right now, I will leave it at that. Then I will bring my lining as well. So here I've already stitched my lining the same way I stitched my fabric. So this is a plain fabric. You can see I joined them, as you can see right there, and I've also marked out the center front. So the next thing we are going to do is to reduce the lining. Reducing my lining at 1 inch. So for this lining for the front, I'm going to reduce it by 1 inch. In fact, all my linings, I'm going to reduce them by 1 inch, because we are going to turn the lining with the main fabric before we stitch. So here I'm done cutting out 1 inch out of my lining. So after cutting it, I'm going to lay my lining right side to right side of the main fabric. So I just open the main fabric, as you can see, lay right side to right side. Make sure all the joinings are matching together. You can secure with your pins the joinings before you go over to the machine to stitch at 1/2 inch. So I'll just go ahead and stitch at 1/2 inch. So after stitching at 1/2 inch, I flipped all my seams to the lining and top stitched. I did that from that point to this other end. So after top stitching, this is what I got. So this is how it's supposed to lay at the hem part of this dress. So now the next thing is to lay it right side to right side because we want to close up the sides. So I'll just go ahead and match them from the waistline to the pocket line, and I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch all the way down. So I did the same thing on the other side. I also stitched from the waistline just 0.25, like 1/4 inch. Don't stitch too much, 1/4 inch. So after stitching 1/4 inch to join them, I cleaned up the edges. So you can see what we got. On the waistline, I turned this fabric from the waistline. So the waistline is still open. So that is the point at which I turned the lining and the fabric. So here I opened up the pockets. Okay, make sure you open and iron them properly. So I am going to stitch right on top of the waistline. So after stitching the waistline, I went ahead to give it a good press. So right now the lining and the fabric are just one fabric. So I ironed it very well. Make sure you iron all the sides. So I'm going to pick up the joining piece to meet up the center front where we notched. You can see how I'm picking it. Then I'll also do the same. So when you pick up that edge, okay, you are going to secure with your pin very well. So I went ahead and secured with my pins because we are going to go over to the machine to stitch everything as one piece. Okay, so now I'll pick up the other points. From the joining piece, I'll match it to the center front where we notched. Then I'm going to secure with my pin. So after securing with my pin, the next thing we are going to do is to stitch that waistline again to hold on to the kissing pleatings. So you can see what we got right here. So this is how it's going to look like. So next, I'll also turn the sides of this dress. The upper piece, turn the side, right side to right side, and stitch with 1/4 of an inch, just like you stitch the down part. So after stitching, we are going to join the upper piece. So make sure you get the mid or center front of the upper piece and then go ahead to stitch with 1/2 inch. So this is what I got for the front. The front piece is ready. Now we want to start joining the back piece. So for the back piece, I'm going to lay the Ankara fabric and the lining for the back right side to right side and repeat exactly the same thing I did for the front. But then don't forget to reduce your lining too. Okay, so the lining I'm going to reduce 1 inch on the down piece. So by the time we turn the lining with the main fabric, the lining will actually be shorter and lay very well on the down piece. So I went ahead and removed 1 inch from the down piece. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to lay this fabric right side to right side. I'll first of all stitch 1/2 inch on the hem side, and then after top stitching I'll go ahead and stitch the sides including the pocket. So that is what I did right here. So now I'm going to turn this back to the right side. I'll turn it to the right side. So if you actually want to turn everything including the zipper allowance, that means you add 1.5 inches on your zipper space. But I'll just serge my zipper allowance space after sewing. So I brought out everything and arranged it properly. This is the zipper allowance. It's still opening. I'll just stitch on top of it. So after stitching, you can see what we got for the back piece. So I'm putting them together as you can see right here. So the next thing we are going to do is to bring the upper dress, and then we are going to sew right side to right side of the upper dress from the zipper allowance on the waistline. So I'm going to join them. So after joining, I went ahead to sew my zip. So I measured, I'm going to put the dress right side to right side, and I'm going to take the measurement of my zip from the neckline. So I just go ahead and take and come up by 1 inch and mark my zipper space. So I'm going to mark 1 inch from that zipper point downwards. I'm going to close the down piece of this dress, as you can see. So after closing, I attach my zip. So this is what the zip looks like. So the zip is ready right now. So the next thing is to sew the sides of this dress. So I'll just go ahead and stitch the side of my dress. So I'm going to stitch at 3/4 of an inch, which is 0.75. So I'll just go ahead and stitch into the pocket at 0.25, 1/4 of an inch. So you can see what we got after stitching, and here is my pocket. So for the sleeve now, I cut out my sleeve at 8.5 inches, okay, and made notches on the sleeve grain line and on the front piece. So I'll just go ahead right now and turn and stitch with my lining. So I cut out lining for it as well. So make sure you make notches on the front piece and on the sleeve grain line so it does not confuse you. So now I'm going to lay the lining and the main fabric wrong side to wrong side. I'll just stitch on top of it to make it one piece. So for you to align this your fabric, the sleeve very well, you have to place it the way I'm placing it right now. You are going to place it after stitching. You can see what we got right here. So to make sure it matches, just put it together like this and mark a straight line wherever the two fabric meets. You can see how I'm placing it. Just watch what I'm doing and cut it out at that point. So if it does not match this way, your sleeve will not match with the dress. So I went ahead and measured it, and I have 8.5 inches. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my sleeve at 8.5 inches. So I'm going to cut the two of them together. So just get your sleeve, make sure you match it the way I matched it, so it will be able to match exactly with the main dress where the colors meet together. So you can see what I got right here. So I'm going to create the ruffles. So for my ruffles, I used unfold 5 inches width of this Ankara fabric, and the length is 45 inches. So I went ahead and cut out the length of Ankara fabric, which is 45, and I folded it at 5 inches. When I open it, it will be 10 inches. So I just go ahead and stitch this fabric on fold. I'm going to pleat in the sleeve. So after pleating, I gave it a good press. So the next thing is to put the sleeve together right side to right side and shaping my sleeve. So here is my sleeve. So I'm going to bring in the dress right now, and I'm going to sew my sleeve. So you can see it's matching as I demonstrated. The next thing now is to sew this sleeve, as you can see, and we have come to the end of this.